Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into the fascinating world of craft beer. I mean, just think about how much the beer aisle has changed, right? From just a few big names to this vibrant tapestry of independent labels, each one offering something unique. So we're going to explore this whole journey, how it went from this niche hobby to a global phenomenon, and how your preferences, what you like, are continuously reshaping this entire industry.
Okay, let's unpack this because, wow, there's so much to explore here, from the rich history to the surprising ways it connects with our identities.
It really is fascinating. And what's interesting here is how these diverse sources we're looking at, they paint such a holistic picture. It's an industry constantly in flux, driven by really passionate people and evolving tastes.
So where are we drawing our insights from today?
Well, our deep dive today is grounded in a pretty robust collection of recent stuff. We're drawing heavily from a comprehensive 2024 Harris poll that was conducted with the Brewers Association. It's an annual thing they do. It gives us crucial data on consumer trends. Okay, the Harris poll. Got it.
Yeah. And we'll also be looking at historical perspectives, some reports on the economic impact, which is significant, and some really in-depth academic research that gets into the very identity of the craft beer consumer, like why people choose what they choose.
Right. So our mission today is, well, pretty clear. We want to unpack what makes craft beer so appealing, figure out where this industry is heading next, and like I hinted, how connecting with craft beer actually helps people define who they are in the modern world.
Exactly. Think of it as a journey not just through flavors, though we'll talk a lot about those, but through culture and personal expression, too.
Okay. So to really appreciate where craft gear is today, I guess we have to start by looking back, right? Set the historical stage. Because for decades after Prohibition ended, 1933?
That's right, 1933.
The American beer landscape was, well, let's be honest, pretty homogenous. It was really defined by these massive breweries.
Oh, absolutely. Post-Prohibition, the industry went through this huge consolidation. And what emerged were these colossal breweries. They focused almost exclusively on light lagers. The household names, Budweiser, Miller, Coors.
The usual suspects.
Exactly. And their priority wasn't, bold, complex flavors or unique regional character. Not at all. It was about achieving absolute consistency.
Making every single bottle taste exactly the same no matter where you bought it.
Precisely. Maximizing efficient distribution on a national scale and appealing to the absolute broadest possible palate. The goal was a crisp, clean beer, something that could be mass-produced, easily shipped across the country, and consumed uniformly everywhere.
So basically a standardized product.
Totally. And that led to a market where, frankly, distinct flavors and local nuances were just gone, almost extinct. If you wanted something different, your options were incredibly limited, really limited.
So if your taste buds were craving something beyond that standard light lager, you were pretty much out of luck.
Pretty much, yeah.
But then came this truly pivotal moment, a real game changer that kind of unwittingly sparked a revolution in the late 70s, right? Specifically 1978.
1978.
President Jimmy Carter signed legislation that legalized homebrewing for personal consumption. Now, that wasn't just a nod to hobbyists, was it? It really opened the floodgates.
It absolutely did. This legalization, it effectively served as this unofficial but highly effective training ground for an entire generation of future craft brewers.
A training ground, I like that.
Yeah. Suddenly, enthusiasts could legally experiment in their garages, their basements, kitchens, wherever. They could delve into historical brewing techniques, explore flavor profiles that had, essentially vanished from the American palate for decades.
So it wasn't just about making beer.
No, not at all. It fostered this vibrant culture, one that valued creativity, artistry, unique taste, over sheer mass appeal and industrial efficiency. And that shift, it fundamentally changed how people saw beer. It went from being just a commodity to a product of real craftsmanship.
And there were pioneers even before that official legalization, right? People who sort of laid the groundwork.
Oh, definitely. You have to mention Fritz Maytag. He's often cited as the real beginning of the American craft beer movement. He almost single-handedly revived San Francisco's Anchor Brewing back in the 60s and 70s, way before home brewing was legal.
Anchor Steam, that's a classic.
Exactly. His commitment to traditional methods and, frankly, bolder flavors for Anchor Steam was like a beacon. Then you had Ken Grossman founding Sierra Nevada Brewing Company in 1980.
Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, that changed things for a lot of people.
It really did. That beer introduced a whole generation to the wonders of hops. These trailblazers, Maytag, Grossman, they proved definitively that consumers were actually hungry for distinctive beers, even if they maybe needed a little education about styles like pale ales and porters that had been largely forgotten or never really explored in the mainstream.
And that surging hunger for something different, well, it leads us directly to maybe the most obvious driver of craft beer's popularity.
The flavor revolution.
I mean, for so many people, it just tasted different. And, in their opinion, objectively better than the mass market stuff.
The difference was profound, almost a revelation for a lot of palates used to those light lagers.
Yeah.
Craft brewers really did unleash this explosion of flavors that just defied the old norms.
Like what specifically?
Well, we saw the emergence of India pale ales, IPAs, right? Defined by that aggressive hop character, offering everything from like piney resinous notes to bright citrusy aromatics.
The hop bombs.
Yeah. Then you had imperial stouts, which gave you this rich, complex sensory experience. Notes of dark chocolate, roasted coffee, sometimes hints of vanilla or dark fruit. And for the really adventurous, tart, almost wine-like sour beers started popping up, pushing the boundaries of what beer could even be.
It sounds like a completely different universe compared to the old standard lager.
It absolutely was.
Yeah.
A stark contrast. It wasn't just about the types of flavors either. It was about the quality, the intensity, and just the sheer diversity available.
And how did they achieve this? It wasn't just finding a new recipe, was it? It sounds like a totally different approach.
It was a completely different philosophy, yeah.
Yeah.
Craft brewers committed wholeheartedly to premium ingredients. They sourced high-quality malted barley, meticulously selected specialty hops, Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe, you name it, and they cultivated specific, often really nuanced yeast strains.
Which is different from the big guys.
Very different. That stands in stark contrast to the macro breweries, which often used adjuncts like rice and corn. Not really for flavor enhancement, but primarily to lighten the beer's body and, critically, to cut production costs.
Ah, the cost-cutting aspect.
That distinction is absolutely key. Now, craft brewers also began incorporating innovative adjuncts, but for the opposite reason, to enhance and diversify flavor.
Okay, like what kind of adjuncts?
Oh, all sorts. You'd find bold additions like coffee beans, vanilla beans, various fruits, raspberry, mango, passion fruit, a whole array of spices like cinnamon or coriander. Some even push boundaries further with really unconventional stuff. Oysters, coconut, even chocolate finding their way into recipes.
Oysters in beer, wow.
Yep. It really underscored the artistry involved. They viewed beer as like a canvas for creative expression. An artisanal product, not just some standardized commodity to be churned out efficiently.
And that focus on artistry, that naturally leads to experimentation, right? The big breweries seem to keep the same recipes forever.
Exactly. Well, the big guys kept the same core recipes for decades. Craft brewers were just relentlessly pushing boundaries. They did it with seasonal releases, limited editions, collaborative brews between different breweries.
Which creates excitement for the consumer.
Totally. It created this amazing sense of discovery. I remember walking into a tap room once and seeing a spiced pumpkin pie porter. It definitely created an amazing sense of discovery and sometimes, a daring taste test. You never knew what innovative creation might pop up on tap next. Kept enthusiasts constantly engaged, coming back for new experiences.
Beyond just the taste, though, another huge piece of the puzzle was this connection to local, right? And the community that built up around these breweries. It wasn't just a coincidence. It happened when it did.
You're absolutely right. Craft beer's emergence coincided perfectly with this broader cultural movement, this widespread desire among consumers to support local businesses, to seek out authentic, more personalized experiences.
People getting tired of the big chains.
Yeah, people were growing increasingly weary of anonymous corporate chains, mass-produced goods. They started viewing their purchasing decisions as like a direct vote, a vote for the type of community they wanted to foster, the values they wanted to uphold. And craft breweries, typically small, independently owned, they became these perfect, tangible symbols of that local-first mentality.
And authenticity was a huge part of that appeal.
Massive.
Yeah.
Each craft brewery seemed to have this compelling story, passionate founders leaving corporate jobs, overcoming huge challenges to open their doors, maybe drawing inspiration from family traditions or local history.
That wasn't just marketing speak.
No, these origin stories, they weren't just marketing fluff. They built powerful emotional connections with consumers. Drinking a local craft beer wasn't just about refreshment anymore. It was about supporting someone's dreams, celebrating creativity, participating in this larger narrative about American entrepreneurship and community building.
There's a term for that, isn't there? This focus on local.
Yeah, it ties directly into a concept called neo-localism. which basically describes the deliberate seeking out of regional lore, locally sourced goods, and this strong attachment to one specific place.
And that resonated particularly with certain groups.
It did, especially with millennials. They increasingly prioritize supporting businesses that contribute directly to their local economy and reflect their community's unique character. Breweries quickly became symbols of local identity. They'd often name their beers after local landmarks, historical figures, even local inside jokes.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think of Great Lakes Brewing Company's Edmund Fitzgerald Porter, named after a ship that sank tragically on Lake Superior that deeply connects to the region's maritime history. Or Captain Lawrence Brewing Co. with their Freshchester beer, a playful nod to Westchester County, New York, where they're located.
Right, it creates that sense of place.
Exactly. It fosters this profound sense of belonging and pride in your area, makes the brewery a genuine community hub, not just a place that makes beer.
And it wasn't just about drinking the beer. Learning about it became important too, right? Consumer education.
Incredibly important. As people learned more about, the intricacies of brewing, how different ingredients impact flavor, the nuances between styles like a stout versus a porter,
Yeah.
they developed a much deeper appreciation for the brewer's skill and the craft itself.
How did that education happen?
Through things like brewery tours, organized tasting classes, educational events, they demystified the whole process. It transformed casual drinkers into really engaged customers who could actually articulate why they preferred craft beer, what made specific styles unique.
And then social media came along and just poured gasoline on the fire, didn't it?
Oh, it turbocharged everything.
Yeah.
Education, community building, discovery in ways no one could have predicted. Platforms like Instagram, and especially Untapped for beer rating, allowed enthusiasts to share these vibrant photos of unique beers, rate their experiences, discover new breweries, all in real time.
And the influencers.
Yeah, beer bloggers and influencers, often really knowledgeable and passionate people, became these informal educators. They reached huge audiences with detailed info about brewing techniques, industry trends, hidden gem breweries. This digital community just extended craft beer's reach way beyond individual tap rooms. It fostered these national, even international networks of enthusiasts connecting, sharing, learning.
So social media really amplified that community aspect. But even with all that digital buzz, there was still the practical challenge. How did these small breweries, often starting tiny, actually get their beer out there? Accessibility must have been a huge hurdle early on.
Well, they absolutely were, especially in the early days. Many early craft beers were only available right at the brewery, or maybe in a very small handful of local bars or specialty beer stores. That was a significant bottleneck for growth.
So how did they overcome that?
Well, the rise of the brewery taproom really revolutionized the industry. These taprooms offered direct sales. That was a game changer because it meant much higher profit margins for the brewers. They bypassed the traditional three-tier distribution system, brewer to distributor to retailer.
Right, cutting out the middleman.
Exactly. But maybe even more importantly, taprooms created these unique, immersive experiences you couldn't get anywhere else. Customers could enjoy incredibly fresh beer, like straight from the tank sometimes. They could often meet the brewers themselves, participate in special release events that added this element of exclusivity.
So the taproom became more than just a place to buy beer.
Absolutely. This direct-to-consumer model was so successful that taprooms became essential, indispensable, really, to nearly every craft brewery's business plan. They transformed into these community gathering spots.
That makes total sense. So as demand grew, how did they scale up? Did they all just try to get huge and compete directly with Budweiser?
Not at all, actually. The industry developed these really varied growth paths. It reflected the diverse ambitions and, frankly, philosophies of the founders. Some stayed intentionally small nano-breweries, they're often called, serving highly hyperlocal markets, focusing on extreme freshness, limited batches.
Keeping it really small and local.
Yeah. Others managed to grow into quite formidable regional powerhouses, but they successfully maintained their independence and that crucial craft credibility while expanding their reach significantly.
And then there's that other model, the hype brewery. That sounds intriguing.
It really is. It kind of defies traditional distribution logic. Take Treehouse Brewing in Massachusetts, probably the prime example. They operate with basically zero traditional distribution.
Zero. So how do you get their beer?
You can only buy their beer directly from their huge, sprawling facility out in Charlton, Massachusetts. This extreme exclusivity, it leads to these hours-long lines of dedicated fans. It attracts beer fanatics from all over the country, people making pilgrimages just to buy their coveted releases.
Wow. Just for beer.
Just for beer. It's a testament to the power of demand created by, perceived scarcity and, admittedly, exceptional quality.
Mm.
Other breweries like Trillium, also in Mass and other half in New York, they follow a similar model, leveraging exclusivity, a constantly rotating selection of innovative beers to create immense demand and this loyal, almost cult-like following.
That level of dedication is incredible. What drives that? And I've heard there's another way people get these super rare beers. Beer trading.
That commitment, it's driven by a mix of things.
Yeah.
The pursuit of novelty, definitely.
Right.
The desire to be part of an exclusive experience. And yeah, the exceptional quality these places often deliver. And yes, beer trading, it's this fascinating phenomenon that grew directly out of that demand for exclusivity.
How does it work?
Enthusiasts organize, mostly online, especially in Facebook groups, to trade rare or locally unavailable beers. It lets people experience the local flair and unique offerings from other communities, even if they can't physically visit the brewery. It's a really powerful testament to the passionate, interconnected community around craft beer, using digital tools to get around geographical limits.
But not all craft breweries stay independent, right? We've seen some big names get bought up by the giant corporations. How does the community feel about that?
That's a key point, and yeah, it's often deeply controversial within the craft community. Goose Island in Chicago, a real trailblazer. They were acquired by Anheuser-Busch InBev back in 2011. Blue Point Brewery out on Long Island followed in 2014, and there have been many others.
People call it selling out.
Often, yeah. These acquisitions, often referred to as selling out, can lead to this perception that the brewery loses its intimacy, its soul, maybe its original commitment to local premium ingredients, even if, financially, it's a huge success for the founders.
Mm-hmm.
That perception of independence and authenticity is just incredibly important to many craft beer consumers. Selling to a macro brewer can sometimes tarnish that image, rightly or wrongly.
Interesting.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the craft beer movement didn't just change what we drank. It fundamentally shifted consumer expectations around things like authenticity, community, the value of artisanal products. It created this new benchmark that all beer, crafts or not, is kind of judged against now.
That shift in expectations, that leads us perfectly into the present day, because the landscape is still evolving, right? And that 2024 Harris poll you mentioned, the one with the Brewers Association, that gives us some great insights into where things stand right now.
It truly does. And one of the most significant shifts highlighted in that 2024 poll is the rise of what they call cross-drinkers.
Cross-drinkers, what does that mean?
It signifies a really notable trend. Consumers are diversifying their alcohol choices. They're not exclusively sticking to just one category, like craft beer, anymore.
So people aren't just saying, I'm only a craft beer person. They're trying other things. What does that look like for brewers? Is this new?
It's a significant evolution in behavior, yeah. And this diversification, it's especially apparent among younger demographics. They seem less inclined to rigidly define themselves by one type of beverage. So craft beer now competes not just with other beers, but also with wine, spirits, and this rapidly expanding array of non-alcoholic options, mocktails, sparkling waters, you name it.
So what do brewers do about that?
Well, for craft brewers, it means they really can't afford to be single-minded. To keep these cross-drinkers and attract new ones, many breweries are strategically expanding their product lines. They're adding hard seltzers, ciders, even non-alcoholic beers to their lineups. It's a crucial versatility strategy, really, aimed at capturing a broader audience and adapting to these more fluid drinking habits.
And it's not just about what else people are drinking, but how often they're drinking craft beer specifically, right? The poll suggested frequency is down, even if the total number of drinkers is up.
That's a crucial and, somewhat counterintuitive finding. Back in 2015, a pretty robust 81% of craft beer drinkers said they consumed it several times a month or more.
Okay, 81%.
By 2024, that figure had plummeted to just 62%.
Wow, that's a big drop. Why?
Well, this decline is part of a broader societal trend. You hear terms like mindful drinking or the sober curious movement. It's particularly prevalent among younger demographics, but increasingly across all age groups. More people are consciously choosing to reduce their overall alcohol intake or even abstain altogether, often for health, wellness, or lifestyle reasons, and that directly impacts consumption frequency across the board, not just for craft beer.
So that sounds like a big challenge for brewers trying to maintain sales volume, but maybe also an opportunity, especially with those health-conscious folks.
Precisely. It's both. Many breweries are responding proactively. They're developing lower-calorie options, lower alcohol beers, sometimes called session beers, and definitely non-alcoholic options. These products cater to consumers who still want that complex taste, the artisanal quality, the social experience of craft beer, but maybe without the full alcohol content or the calories. It's about adapting, staying relevant in a more health-aware market.
But despite all these shifts, cross-drinking, lower frequency, health focus, one thing remains absolutely dominant for craft drinkers, according to the poll.
Absolutely. Flavor, it remains paramount. The 2024 survey underscores this point really strongly. A massive 92% of respondents cited flavor as the primary factor influencing their drinking decisions.
92%, that's huge.
It's a powerful affirmation of the whole craft beer ethos, right?
Yeah.
Consumers expect that wide variety of bold, unique, compelling taste profiles from craft that they just can't get from the mass-produced options.
Yeah, and does the survey say what kinds of flavors are popular right now?
It does. It specifically reveals that crisp, juicy, hazy, or fruity profiles are in extremely high demand. Think hazy IPAs, fruited sours, that sort of thing. This reflects a preference for approachable yet still distinctive flavors, often driven by modern hop varieties, Citra, Mosaic, Galaxy, that give those tropical and citrus notes.
And what's less popular?
Conversely, flavors that are maybe overtly tart, excessively spicy, or intensely dark and roasty are currently less popular overall. It indicates a general shift towards lighter, more refreshing, perhaps easier drinking tastes across the board.
So brewers need to be incredibly agile, constantly innovating not just with brandy styles, but maybe tweaking existing ones to match these trends.
Exactly. They have to continuously experiment with new flavor combinations, developing styles like those hazy IPAs and fruit-infused ales that are really resonating right now. And leveraging seasonal and limited edition releases is still a fantastic way to keep consumers engaged, excited. Fostering that crucial sense of discovery and novelty we talked about earlier. It's just this continuous cycle of innovation and being responsive.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Beyond just what people are drinking, the industry is adapting not just to taste buds, but to these entirely new lifestyles and some pretty complex economic realities, like gentrification. How does that tie into craft breweries?
Indeed. It's this fascinating paradox. Breweries, often by moving into neglected industrial areas or sort of downtrodden urban cores, they breathe new life into them, attract new foot traffic. But then they can become victims of their own success.
How so?
Well, as the neighborhood becomes more popular, attracts more businesses, more residents, property values and rents inevitably start to climb. While it's hard to put an exact number on it for every single brewery, lease issues are frequently cited as a major reason why breweries end up closing.
So the brewery helps make the neighborhood cool, and then they get priced out.
Pretty much. Rick Benfield from the North Carolina Brewers Guild put it perfectly. He said, "You're kind of a victim of your own success, because what you've done is made your property more valuable." And this isn't just hypothetical. We've seen numerous beloved breweries, often cornerstone businesses in these revitalized areas, forced to close or relocate simply because the rent became unsustainable.
That's a tough situation.
It really highlights this dilemma for small businesses.
Yeah.
How do you contribute to urban renewal without getting priced out of the very success you helped create? It often pushes breweries to think about strategies like, can we buy our property? Or how do we diversify revenue beyond just beer sales, maybe food, events, merchandise, even co-working spaces, just to build more financial resilience against those rising costs?
That's a tough pill to swallow for a small business, especially one that feels really rooted in its community. And it's not just rent, is it? There are other challenges like labor relations, unionization efforts.
Yes, that's another layer. Unionizing craft breweries has traditionally been trickier compared to the macro breweries, largely due to their smaller scale, maybe more informal workplace cultures.
What's the issue there?
Well, a notable issue highlighted in the sources is the increasing use of what are called persuaders. These are basically anti-union consultants hired by management, often at significant cost, to dissuade employees from organizing.
Anti-union consultants.
Yeah. For instance, Boston Beer Company, the makers of Sam Adams, reportedly paid as much as $385 per hour for anti-union meetings with their workers. These tactics often involve management presenting their perspective on the perceived downsides of unionizing, maybe emphasizing direct communication channels, highlighting potential negative impacts on company culture or flexibility.
And does it work?
It can lead to unionization drives fizzling out, yeah. There was a case with a Teamsters Local 773 drive in the summer of 2023 that didn't succeed after meetings like these. So this raises this important question. How do brewers navigate all these complex shifts? from consumer health trends, rising operational costs, the sensitive issue of labor relations, all while trying to stay true to that authentic, community-focused craft ethos that defines them. It's a really delicate, continuous balancing act.
That's a perfect segue, actually, because this journey isn't just about what the brewers are doing. It's deeply connected to your choices as a listener and what those choices might say about you. This idea that craft beer consumption is often tied to identity. That's fascinating. It's not just what you drink, but who you are when you drink it.
It's a profound concept, really. Academic research digs into this, exploring how people actively, construct and express who they are through their consumer choices. It speaks to this idea of a consumer subculture, where different levels of involvement with craft beer can actually help shape a person's identity, their sense of belonging.
So my beer choice says something about me.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is how our personal motivations for choosing a craft beer often reflect these deeper aspects of our self-perception, our connection to this broader subculture. The research we looked at identifies 6 distinct consumer categories, moving from low to high involvement, each with unique characteristics, unique motivations. Should we dive into them?
Yeah, let's break them down. Who's first?
Okay, at the lowest end of the involvement spectrum, we have the casuals.
Casuals, okay.
These consumers are primarily looking for simple, leisure, relaxation, refreshment. They drink occasionally, and they often gravitate towards more widely available, maybe mass-produced craft beers, things that are generally approachable. The research mentioned examples like La Chouffe, Duvel, Grauerige, d'Ig.
Beers you can find pretty easily.
Exactly. While they prefer social settings, enjoying a beer with friends, they'll also occasionally drink alone just for relaxation. Maybe they see an IPA in the fridge as a, well-deserved way to blow off steam after a busy day. Their activities related to craft beer are limited occasional visits to breweries or maybe pub tastings, but it's not a regular hobby.
And how do they see themselves?
Crucially, they don't really consider themselves part of any distinct craft beer subculture, and they don't associate it with social status. For them, it's simply a pleasant beverage, enjoyable but not identity-defining.
Okay, so casuals are about the immediate moment, the enjoyment. What's the next step up?
Next up, we have the socials. Their involvement is moderate, and their primary drivers are really social reasons. The shared experience of drinking with others, they seek belonging within a group.
So it's about the company?
Very much so. Like casuals, they tend to prefer more mass-produced craft beers, the ones they can easily find and share. They're somewhat divided on whether they'd always choose craft over other beers in social settings, which kind of indicates that the social context often trumps the specific drink choice for them.
Makes sense.
Many in this group are actually quite new to craft beer, just starting to explore. They drink in pretty much any social context, backyard, BBQs, bars, parties. They might occasionally post on social media, but it's more to show, hey, look what I'm doing. I'm having a craft beer with friends, rather than deeply engaging with the beer itself or writing detailed reviews.
And their knowledge level?
It's somewhat limited. They could distinguish certain styles, maybe, recognize flavors they personally enjoy, but they seem to enjoy sharing random facts and recommendations with friends. Similar to casuals, though, they don't feel a strong sense of being part of the craft beer subculture itself.
Okay, so for socials, it's really about that shared experience, and beer is the enjoyable backdrop. What about those folks who are always hunting for the next new thing?
That would be the adventurers. They also show moderate involvement, but their primary drivers are totally different. Novelty and variety. They're thrill-seeking, constantly looking for new styles, new tastes, maybe that trendy New England IPA, a classic German Weissen, a complex Belgian Tripel, whatever's new and exciting.
The explorers.
Exactly. Now, interestingly, the research shows that while they drink in any social setting, they're more often drinking alone than casuals or socials.
Really? Why is that?
They seem to see this solo consumption as quality time, or maybe a well-deserved treat after a busy day, a chance to really savor the unique flavors without distraction. They might occasionally hit up beer tastings, festivals, or breweries, but it's not like a regular structured commitment.
Are they into the details, the history?
Not really. They have low interest in the history, the rituals, the science behind brewing. Their focus is purely on the sensory experience, the thrill of discovery. However, they do use local beers as a way to build a local identity project, showing pride in their city or region through the beers they choose.
And social status.
Most adventurers don't associate craft beer with high social status, though some acknowledge a link to the middle class, mostly just due to the higher price point compared to, say, Bud Light.
Okay, so adventurers are on a personal quest for new flavors. But then we get to a group that sounds a bit different, maybe more opinionated.
You're definitely thinking of the elitists. Their involvement is also moderate, but they are quite distinct in their motivations and behavior. They associate craft beer with high sophistication, gastronomic value. They view it almost like fine wine or gourmet food.
Ah, the connoisseurs, or maybe something else.
Well, I love showing off their understanding and skills, often by referencing obscure facts, specific brewing techniques. And they tend to enforce rules around consumption and rituals, like insisting on specific glassware for certain styles, pouring it just so.
I think I know the type.
Unsurprisingly, they're often disliked by other groups, particularly the devotees and experts we'll get to. They're perceived as bragging or having this overly intellectualized approach that kind of takes the fun out of beer for others.
And social status is important to them.
Very. For elitists, consumption is strongly linked to a higher social status. Due to craft beer's sometimes pricey exclusive image, its use of finer materials, its broader, more nuanced flavor palette, their consumption is very much about demonstrating their superior knowledge and refined taste.
Wow. Is there a quote that sums them up?
There's a rather blunt quote from one respondent in the research.
Mm-hmm.
I like to act like I know a lot about craft beer. It's all part of the act to show others you know about the topic.
Oof. Okay, that's telling. So moving into the really higher involvement levels now, who are the hardcore of this subculture? The people who truly live and breathe craft beer?
The hardcore really begins with the devotees. These consumers have a high level of involvement. For them, craft beer is truly part of their lifestyle, not just some casual pastime.
What motivates them?
Their main motivation is this deep enjoyment and genuine appreciation for the work that has gone into it. That includes having a solid understanding of the history, the science, the intricate artistry behind the brewing process. They often prefer specific styles, maybe IPAs are a favorite, but they also enjoy delving into these niche hobbies related to beer, like expertly pairing craft beer with different foods.
So they're really into the craft itself.
Absolutely, and they strongly favor unique, local, small-scale breweries, often those adhering to traditional brewing standards like the Reinheitsgebot, the old German beer purity law, just water, barley, hops, yeast. That traditional approach appeals to them.
What about values?
Devotees also prioritize values like sustainability and locality, primarily out of solidarity, a genuine desire to support local businesses and ethical practices. They regularly engage in beer-related activities, beer festivals, tastings, brewery tours. Many are active homebrewers themselves.
And they share their passion.
Definitely. They're keen to share it, often hosting beer-related activities like a cheese and craft beer evening, something to spark conversation and introduce others to their enthusiasm. On social media, they post on Instagram or Facebook, but not really to show off. It's more to spark conversation, encourage others to try new things, share knowledge they've picked up.
How do they feel about the elitists?
Oh, they feel a strong, authentic attachment to the craft beer subculture, and they are quick to voice their strong dislike for beer snobs or the elitists, whom they see as superficial. They generally only link craft beer to a somewhat higher social status just because of its price, but it's not a primary driver of their own identity.
Okay, so devotees are passionate, community-oriented, genuinely invested. And then right at the very top, you have the ultimate experts.
Indeed. At the absolute pinnacle, we have the experts. This group has the highest level of involvement. For them, craft beer is truly inseparable from their identity, deeply integrated into their self-concept.
They're seen as leaders.
Yeah, they're often seen as role models within the subculture, sometimes creating phenomena, jargon, even influencing trends through their discerning tastes and extensive knowledge. They are extremely well educated on every facet of craft beer, from its global history and intricate brewing science to specific rituals and practices.
It's like what kind of details?
Oh, granular details. Proper glass selection for different styles, optimal storing conditions, the minute details of the brewing process itself. They know their stuff.
And they share this knowledge.
Actively. Experts actively educate others, whether it's online through really critical reviews or detailed blog posts, or in person, sharing their deep knowledge with friends, relatives, even strangers at tastings. They don't just drink beer. They seem to seek life fulfillment through craft beer. It provides deeper meaning for them, and it's closely linked to their self-worth and sense of purpose.
What's the main difference between a devotee and an expert? It sounds like a thin line.
It can be a thin line. The key differentiator is that experts possess a significantly greater depth of experience and knowledge. They've often explored thousands of different beers, different brewing techniques, and they actively contribute to the subculture's intellectual discourse and evolution. They're not just participants. they're shaping it.
Wow. That is a truly detailed breakdown. It definitely makes you think about your own preferences and maybe where you fall on that spectrum. And the research even found that people aren't always just one thing, right? They can be a mix.
Absolutely. That's a critical nuance. It highlights the complexity, the richness of consumer behavior. Our identities aren't static. They're fluid, evolving. And our consumption habits often reflect that dynamic nature. You might be an adventurer who loves trying new beers, but also a social who really enjoys sharing those discoveries with friends in a community setting. This multifaceted approach makes the subculture even more vibrant and adaptable.
Okay. So knowing all this, the evolving consumer landscape, these diverse motivations, what's the roadmap for brewers? How do they thrive in this constantly shifting market? That 2024 Harris poll must offer some clear takeaways.
It provides a very clear, data-driven path forward, yeah.
Yeah.
Based on that data, brewers really have three key strategies they need to embrace. First, embrace product diversification.
Meaning, don't just make beer.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
With that significant rise of cross-drinkers, it's probably no longer enough to just brew traditional beer, even if it's excellent craft beer. Breweries should strategically consider expanding their portfolios, include things like hard seltzers, ciders, and increasingly high-quality non-alcoholic options. This lets them appeal to a broader audience that might not always choose a traditional beer on every occasion.
Yeah.
Helps them capture sales from those varied preferences.
Right. So if I go to a tap room with friends and one wants beer, one wants seltzer, the brewery can keep everyone happy. Okay, what's the second strategy?
Second, brewers absolutely need to cater to health-conscious consumers. That mindful drinking movement isn't going away. It's gaining traction across all demographics. So there's this growing, sustained demand for lower alcohol options, lower calorie beers, and particularly high-quality non-alcoholic beers that still deliver on flavor.
Innovation in NA is huge right now.
It is. Innovating in these areas, it not only attracts new market segments, but also helps maintain loyalty among existing customers who are simply choosing to drink less frequently or maybe abstain sometimes. It shows responsiveness to those evolving health and wellness trends.
And given that flavor is still king for that huge 92%, I'm guessing the third strategy is all about taste.
It's the third and maybe the most vital strategy, a relentless focus on flavor innovation. Even with all the other shifts, flavor is still the single most important factor, period. This means brewers have to constantly prioritize developing new, trending flavor profiles, especially those crisp, juicy, hazy, intensely fruity ones that are dominating right now.
So new hops, new fruits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exploring new hop varieties, experimenting with unique fruit purees, mastering brewing techniques that enhance aroma and mouthfeel. And leveraging those seasonal and limited edition releases is still a fantastic way to keep consumers engaged, excited, fostering that crucial sense of discovery, encouraging repeat visits, repeat purchases, keeps the whole category fresh and exciting.
It's clear that craft beer isn't just about what's in the glass. It's become a massive economic engine, too, really contributing to local economies. Can you give us a sense of that impact?
Oh, the economic contribution is truly substantial, often underestimated. Let's take New York State as a really compelling example. Back in 2019, its 434 breweries generated an impressive $3.5 billion in direct economic impact.
$3.5 billion, wow.
Yeah, and that figure covers everything: production, sales, operating those bustling tasting rooms, associated tourism. These operations collectively supported 11,000 workers across the state, provided a substantial $722 million in wages.
That's significant employment.
It is. And the key insight here isn't just the sheer scale of the numbers. It's how a movement born from essentially a hobby with some strategic local and state support can become this powerful model for revitalizing local economies. It demonstrates the profound impact these artisanal industries can have on community prosperity.
And government support played a role there.
Oh, definitely. This growth in New York, and you see similar trends nationwide, it's been significantly bolstered by specific government support. For instance, millions of dollars in grants help small breweries get started or expand. Tax benefits like specific farm brewery licenses were strategically implemented.
Farm brewery licenses.
Yeah, they incentivize brewers to use locally grown ingredients like hops or barley grown right there in the state. So it directly supports local agriculture too. And crucially, laws allowing breweries to sell beer directly by the pint in their tasting rooms that dramatically boosted their growth and profitability early on.
The direct sales again.
Exactly. Allowed them to capture higher margins, build those direct customer relationships that were just vital for their early success and continued resilience. It's a really powerful example of how targeted policy can help foster a thriving local industry.
So wrapping this all up, What does this mean for the future of your favorite brew? This craft beer journey, it's clearly far from over. It seems to be about constant innovation, community, and maybe even knowing who you are through what you choose to drink.
It's truly a testament, isn't it, to how an industry, born from this passionate hobby, driven by a desire for quality, can successfully compete with absolute corporate giants. Craft beer's exponential growth, it reflects these profound underlying shifts in consumer values. A growing prioritization of quality, genuine community, authentic experiences over just sheer mass production and anonymous corporate branding.
So the core appeal hasn't really changed?
I don't think so. The fundamental allure of craft beer, that desire for genuine passion, authentic stories behind the product, and perhaps most importantly, beer that tastes like someone truly cared about making it, that remains as relevant and powerful as ever. It's continuing to shape not just American consumer culture, but increasingly global drinking habits too.
So, a final thought for you listening. As these lines between traditional craft beer and other beverages like seltzers and non-alcoholic options continue to blur, and as consumer identities within this fascinating subculture become maybe more fluid, how will your personal craft beer identity evolve? What new flavors or experiences will you seek out as the industry continues its passionate pursuit of innovation?